Every now and then, nature likes to remind us humans that we're not the center of the universe, and that at any moment, any one of us could find ourselves in the belly of a big fish. That's exactly what happened in 1935, when a 14-foot tiger shark regurgitated a human arm at an Australian aquarium, prompting a police investigation that uncovered a mystery so wild it remains unsolved to this day. Today, we're looking at the time a shark spat up a human arm and launched a murder investigation. But before we get started, be sure to subscribe to the Weird History channel. After that, leave us a comment to let us know what other historic, animal-related mysteries you'd like to hear about. Okay, time to take a bite out of crime. Visitors attending the Coogee Aquarium Baths on April 25, 1935, were expecting to enjoy a fun afternoon of admiring exotic marine life. While they technically still got a unique experience, it probably wasn't exactly what anyone had in mind. A 14-foot tiger shark had gotten itself tangled in a local fisherman's line, so the fisherman brought the animal to the aquarium for show. I guess throwing it back was out of the question. Once at the aquarium, the shark apparently became stricken with extreme performance anxiety and spat up the contents of its stomach, which included a bird, a rat, and a mangled human arm. Technically, it was a Russian doll situation. The 14-foot shark had actually swallowed a smaller shark, and that shark had gulped down the severed limb. Chaos ensued, and investigators were called to the scene to try and sort out what had happened. Generally, when you find a human arm in the belly of a shark, the obvious conclusion is that the rest of the person is probably in the shark as well. Fatal shark attacks are rare, but they do occur. And a 14-foot tiger shark was certainly big enough to eat a guy. At first, it seemed likely that whoever the unlucky owner of the regurgitated arm was, they had either been attacked and killed by the shark or had drowned, and the shark had merely taken a bite out of their waterlogged remains. But when a coroner and a shark expert were called in to examine the evidence, they concluded that the shark had not bitten off the severed limb. In fact, there were no tooth marks on the arm at all. Instead, they determined that a blade had been used to separate the limb. This was a troubling discovery, because it meant that officials weren't dealing with an accident or an animal attack, unless sharks figured out how to use knives, which would still be troubling. New South Wales authorities had a homicide on their hands, and one with no obvious answers. If the shark had not attacked the victim, how had it come to swallow the victim's arm? Did the murderer dismember the victim and throw the body into the water piece by piece? Or did the murderer feed the remains to the shark directly? And most importantly, who did the arm belong to? The case opened up as detectives further examined the arm for clues. Collecting evidence from a swallowed body part would be difficult in any decade. But in the 1930s, forensic science was much less advanced, making the task that much harder. When the homicide investigation was launched, the arm was examined for unusual marks or scars. Of particular note was a rope tied around the wrist. Unless the arm had been severed in a freak rope swinging accident, the rope told police that foul play had likely occurred. Even more vital than the rope was a tattoo of two boxers in sparring position. That's a pretty uncommon tattoo. So investigators had photos and a description of the body art published in a local newspaper, hoping that someone would recognize the unique image and come forward to identify the victim. Luckily, a man named Edwin Smith recognized the tattoo and the arm it belonged to, that of his brother, 40-year-old James "Jimmy" Smith, a boxer who had recently gone missing. That's a heck of a way to find out why your brother hasn't been answering the phone. While Edwin received some closure on his brother's disappearance, his identification of the arm only led the police to more questions. Notably, how did Jimmy Smith's arm end up in a shark? And where was the rest of Jimmy Smith? The police used the information Edwin provided to trace James Smith's last movements and try to find a suspect. And they found one in short order, a friend of Smith's who was up to no good. When James Smith's final movements were tracked, the police found that he'd been playing dominoes with a man named Patrick Brady at a local seaside hotel bar. As it turned out, Brady had a few prior convictions and was known to be a little shady. Further investigation uncovered the fact that Brady had vacated his apartment right after Smith had gone missing. Things looked even worse for Brady when they got to his apartment. It had been deeply cleaned, furniture and bedding had been replaced, and Brady had purchased a brand new trunk. There was even a rowboat there, and it had been cleaned from top to bottom. Well, I'm no big city detective, but that all sounds pretty suspicious. The police agreed, thinking it strange that a small-time crook would suddenly deep clean his apartment and rowboat right around the time his friend's remains got spat up by a fish. Brady became the prime suspect in the investigation, but beyond the circumstantial evidence, there wasn't anything to tie him to the crime yet, not even a motive. Additionally, the case experienced a heartbreaking setback just 3 days after the severed arm was discovered. The Coogee Aquarium in New South Wales terminated the tiger shark. This dealt a blow to the investigation. It could no longer be examined for any other potential evidence. It was also a missed opportunity for the aquarium. People would have paid double to see a man-eater. With Patrick Brady as a suspect, the police at least had a promising lead, if not the evidence to make an arrest. But then a taxi driver came forward and shook things up even more. The cab driver admitted to having driven Brady to the home of a man named Reggie Lloyd Holmes the day after James Smith was last seen. Holmes was an established shipbuilder and businessman, but according to the witness, Holmes was bad news. He used his boats in drug smuggling rings and insurance scams. Furthermore, both Smith and Brady had worked with Holmes on his schemes, despite the fact that Holmes initially claimed he didn't know either of them. That's a red flag. A bite-sized one. The police suspected that the three had been working together on some kind of illegal activity and something had gone horribly wrong, but couldn't extract any information out of the men. Holmes refused to talk and was released from questioning. The police charged Brady, their initial prime suspect, in connection to Smith's apparent demise. But the case was about to take another unexpected turn. After the cops released Holmes from questioning, he took his speedboat out on the water and shot himself, letting his body fall overboard. Fortunately, Holmes hadn't been terribly precise. The bullet that was supposed to have ended his life had merely wounded him, and he climbed back into the boat, largely unscathed. People out on the water who had witnessed this bizarre incident called the police. When they arrived, Holmes led them on a Keystone Cops boat chase around the harbor and into the ocean until he finally decided to throw in the towel. Holmes was brought back in for questioning, and this time, he told the police the whole story of what happened to James Smith. According to Holmes, Patrick Brady had whacked James Smith, dumping most of him into the ocean in a trunk. So that's why he needed a new trunk. But Brady had kept Smith's arm and brought it to Holmes's house to threaten him. According to Holmes, Brady blackmailed him by threatening to do the same to him if he didn't pay for Brady's silence. Holmes maintained that when Brady left, he tied a weight to the arm with a piece of rope and threw it into the ocean, which he presumed was when the shark entered the picture. The shark actually corroborated Brady's version of events, as Smith's arm had indeed been the only human body part discovered in its stomach. Holmes agreed to give his version of events in court, but the day before the trial, he was found dead in his car. Considering the previous botched attempt and subsequent boat chase, it certainly seemed like Holmes had offed himself. But the timing of his death was suspicious. The police weren't sure if he had taken his own life or if Brady had done him in to keep him from testifying. There was also a theory that Holmes had hired a hitman to take himself out so that his family could still collect on his life insurance policy. Holmes had withdrawn £500 from the bank the day before his body was discovered, so the hitman theory, while a little outlandish, wasn't unbelievable. Either way, this was a big problem. Without Holmes's testimony, there wasn't enough evidence to convict Brady. Without Holmes's testimony, police couldn't even prove that Smith was dead. For all they knew, he could be stumbling around Sydney, missing one arm, but otherwise alive and well. So with no new developments and the only evidence being one severed arm and a deceased shark, the case fell apart. In September of 1935, Brady was acquitted of all charges, but was immediately arrested on an unrelated charge of forgery. Hey, the guy was a criminal. He wasn't going to suddenly change careers because of some loose-lipped shark. However, Brady continued to maintain his innocence in this particular crime for the next 30 years, until his passing in 1965. Legal historian Alex Castles remained unconvinced that Patrick Brady was capable of taking James Smith's life. He also didn't see a clear motive for Brady going after Smith in the first place, since they were friends. And Holmes's version of events does seem a little too conveniently self-absolving, although he was clearly shaken up by what had occurred. In his 1995 book, The Shark Arm Murders, great title, Castles suggests that Smith was actually a police informant who got snuffed out by a criminal named Eddie Wyman. Castles alleges that Smith told the police critical information that led to Wyman's arrest. So Wyman took revenge on Smith and silenced him for good. But Castles' theory is just that, a theory. Officially, the shark arm case has never been solved. And after 90 years, it seems unlikely that it ever will. So what do you think? What really happened? Let us know in the comments below, and while you're at it, check out some of these other videos from our weird history.